Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Friday, December 6th, 2024. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. That's the mantra of the Inspired podcast of these shows here. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube in the live chat. Ronnie's here, our wonderful moderator. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronnie, and our dear friends from all over the place. Christine's not with us today. But we're still going to try to make it a good, solid show, my friends. Somebody said that the word that should have been used should have been affecting with a. Well, there's a play here. Both words sort of are applicable. Both, the A spelling and the E spelling affecting. All right. So the topic today is longest pandemic in history is still affecting billions. And I gotta preface this as to why why this came up, why this continually is coming up. Um, Christine and I, like I've said many times before, we've been working with people one-on-one and in group settings for many years. She even longer than that, much longer than me, in that sense. And one thing that we noticed about ourselves and about most people is that even if they trust you fully, being, let's say you're their coach, they trust you fully, you're their therapist, their counselor, they trust you. And even though you can give them sort of instructions as to how to positively change their lives or do something better, unless they understand the underlying why and the how, it is almost impossible for 99% of the people to change. And I'm part of those 99%, by the way. I need to comprehend what the nature of a problem is, why it is there, and how it got there to implement the solution. So, many of you have been commenting, writing emails with very profound insights on some of our greatest challenges and some of our greatest opportunities. And many of you have repeatedly mentioned to me and to us, and I know you do this lovingly, that we simply now need to shift over to just sort of solution-oriented thinking. And then solutions are being suggested. And when I look at those solutions, some are, of course, valuable and some are great and some are more expansive and less. Some have partial solutions in them. But I notice that we all, to a certain degree, are in and out of a phenomenon that is called mass formation psychosis. Now, you might have heard this term during the COVID years. We're going to explain what that is, how it works, and why it was explained beautifully during the COVID years, why it explained the behaviors of people, but it didn't address the much, much bigger picture. And that was an opportunity. And we're going to take this opportunity today because we need to understand this properly. Okay, so let's dive into it together, my friends. So, mass formation psychosis refers to a psychological phenomenon in which a large group of people enters a shared hypnotic-like state characterized by irrational behavior, diminished critical thinking, and emotional over-identification with a collective narrative. The term is often associated with mass hysteria or crowd psychology, but has gained attention in discussions of contemporary societal dynamics. So basically, this was really first introduced to the people through alternative media podcasts, and I know Dr. Robert Malone. Well, won't say much about him, but I'll say this: that he was one of the people introducing this term that he himself heard from Matthias Desmet. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. The term gained prominence during the COVID years primarily through the work of Dr. Matthias Desmet, a Belgian professor of clinical psychology at Ghent University. Dr. Desmet has extensively studied mass psychology and totalitarianism, particularly focusing on how societal conditions can lead to collective states of irrational behavior and conformity. Okay, so this sort of makes sense, right? If you look at those who stayed calm in 2020 and those who, after a few weeks or months, sort of caught on, there's something nefarious going on, or something's not right. They stepped back, they calmed down, they started their quote unquote awakening journey. And then they were like, okay, why are these people so incredibly hysterical? Why are they so hypnotized? What is going on? And so when this explanation, and we're going to go deeper into what it means, came through, it did not only make sense, it described it down to a T. But what it didn't do is address the much larger picture that could have been addressed but wasn't. And we are now at this junction point where we can address the much larger picture, what this actually means, and that the COVID example was just a small fraction of it. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper. Excuse me. What are some of the key characteristics? Well, it begins when individuals feel isolated or disconnected from their societal environments. This often arises from significant societal changes, technological shifts, or collective crises. There's a lack of meaning. Feelings of isolation lead to a sense of purposelessness or lack of meaning, which creates a vacuum that a collective ideology or narrative can feel. Okay, so we sort of begin to understand when people get isolated, when something changes too quickly, we're not we're designed to adapt, we're designed to assimilate, but not within days and weeks. We do this over longer periods of time. When that happens too fast or a crisis kicks in, then we start to get not just disconnected but also disoriented. Basically, the structures we rely on don't provide the safety and security that we're used to. The lack of meaning is that all of a sudden everything that was still valid yesterday seems to become invalid today, but we were basing our lives, our decisions on that meaning that we derive from those structures, right? So when that happened during the COVID years, it was so fast that it was understandable for people that were very much identifying with what they are, being their profession, right? Going to work every day, never having missed a day, always delivering and showing up. All of a sudden, everything shut down. So the lack of meaning was there, right? The people going out to events and doing things, all of that went away. And so this lack of meaning really became very visible and feelable to a lot of people. Then we had a powerful narrative, often propagated by leaders, media, or influential groups, that offers an explanation for the discontent and provides a target for collective frustration. The scapegoat story. This is so often the case. And of course, we saw that during COVID years very beautifully. I'm always referring to the COVID years because it gives us the easiest way to understand this phenomenon, right? So all of this happened, and all of a sudden it was easy. We had one enemy, the virus, and of course everybody who did not go along with the suggestions and the mandates and that crap, right? So that was what happened. That was the narrative that everybody who got hyped out and who got hypnotized could jump on. Oh yeah, this makes sense. These people are the problem. We're gonna have to all unite against them. A focus of attention. The group's attention becomes narrowly focused on the unifying narrative. Critical thinking diminishes as emotional resonance with the narrative intensifies. So this is highly significant because during those years, um, people got so invested because it was all they could see all day, every day. That's all what the news talked about, what their representatives talked about, their families talked about, social media, everything was just COVID. So it was easy to stay fully focused on that narrative. And rather than sit back critically, there was a media campaign that literally said, don't do your own research, right? Just trust the science. Remember that? And so people were so emotionally attached because they were told that if they don't go along, everybody will die and it's the end of everything. And so they went all in. I mean, the things that were called for would make every totalitarian regime very, very proud, that good, everyday people called for concentration camps, even death penalties and all that crap. So we could really see that focus of attention kick in. Loss of individual identity. Individuals surrender their sense of self to the collective, deriving their identity from group membership and adherence to the shared belief system. Once again, very easy to see during those years, and completely irrational behavior. Actions that would be considered irrational on an individual level become normalized within the group. Dissent is often harshly suppressed or ostracized. You could see that when young mothers who went to the grocery store to get their groceries with their children didn't mask or whatever, uh, a mob of people, right? People getting arrested for not wearing a mask, or literally getting arrested, getting, um, slammed on the ground and treated as terrorists, right? Completely irrational behaviors. People sitting in their cars alone by themselves, double masking, putting masks on the air vents and stuff like that. I mean, we could, if you need a social study in irrational behavior, 2020, 21, 22 should provide more than enough material for that. So here are the mechanics of the formation. And this is really important. Once we get the foundation, we can get into the bigger picture here. The trigger events. Societal stressors such as pandemics, economic collapses, or social unrest can act as catalysts. Give me one moment here, please, folks. I'll be right back. It's a little better. Thank you. So, trigger events can be societal stressors such as pandemics, economic collapses, or societal unrest, and they can act as catalysts for such a mass formation psychosis. There are many others. These are just examples. Propaganda and repetition. Repetition of the narrative through media channels reinforces group belief. Fear and anxiety. Fear of an external threat, real or perceived, is heightened, ensuring adherence to the collective cause. So these are all the mechanics of how it works. Social pressure. Nonconformity is penalized, creating a feedback loop of compliance. Okay, so this is the fundamental, these are the fundamental basics of mass formation psychosis. Now, while the COVID years are the beautiful example that we can learn from, what is actually true and was never discussed, and the alternative community to a large degree is missing completely. Some are really focusing on this, but the rest is missing it completely, is that we have been living and were born into a millennia-old mass formation psychosis, which could be described as our way of life and our perception of reality. And this is where it gets really interesting. The entire world, with notable exceptions that thankfully now are growing and becoming bigger groups, but the entire world is affected by a pandemic that has been going on for millennia, and that is this mass formation psychosis, is where humans are being deceived from the cradle to the grave, and it's becoming a genetically passed down deception, where a being is born into a family that lives within this system of insanity, by the way, in an artificial construct, and believes it to be real. And we go and live lives that, if we were to take the 40,000 foot view every now and then, we could see the complete madness and insanity of those lives and the false beliefs that those lives are based on. I say this without judgment because none of us are exempt. I don't say this with, oh, these people are so dumb. No, it is literally a mass formation psychosis. And so when this term came up and it started to describe um, the COVID years and the behaviors of people, the media really did not want this to be out there, and the powers that want to be don't want this to be out there, because if people start thinking a little longer about it, they will realize that much of our daily lives are complete results of mass formation psychosis. The things that we do, how we live, what we believe in, how we go about and stress and work for something or someone most of our lives. We a few months ago, we did an entire show on how much of our lifetime in terms of hours, days, weeks, and months are put into this system versus how many hours we actually get to be, to think, to meditate, to love, to do all the things that we perceive to be human. So what we're actually learning through this, through what Matthias Desmet has beautifully made available. He's written a book and he's made it available to almost anybody who wants to explore this subject. Is that if we only look at isolated periods in our human story, like the COVID stuff, or like a war, wars that are transpiring, or any other what I call a campaign because it lasts longer. It has the focus is on one particular thing for longer periods of time. Those are all psychological operations within the big psychological operation. But anytime that these big psychological operations happen, it is extremely difficult while it's happening to pull people out of that and to show them what's going on. Only later, in hindsight, they can start seeing things. So, right now, we don't have a massive worldwide psychological operation going on. We have multiple ones, but we don't have one like COVID or one like, a war that everybody's focused on. I assume that soon another one will come. But what it gives us the opportunity to do until this intensity arrives again is to really examine ourselves. And this is what we've been saying. You can go down all the rabbit holes for as long as you want to, and that is important because you finally start to understand what's really happening. Unless we study ourselves and really get to know ourselves, which is the least explored field by most humans. I'll tell you, I'm always surprised how much people know about sports, how much they know about their favorite football teams, the players, their stories, their scores, their private lives, how much they know about all these subjects. But when I talk to them about themselves, what drives them, what motivates them, what are their triggers, what are their inspirators, what are their motivators, what are their belief systems, what are their potential traumas, why do they do things, why do they see things the way they do, why do things that they want not work out, all those things. When I ask them that, they have no idea. And I go, okay, so you know so much about these external things that don't really matter. Like, who gives a shit who that football player married? Who gives a flying fuck about that? It's not important at all. But you don't know anything about you. You don't know who you are. You don't know why you are. You don't know where you are, and don't know what drives you, how your psychology works, how your personality works, how this avatar works. It's very astonishing to me. And those that do, like you, like our wonderful audience and many others, those that do go deeper within, that do study themselves, if we're honest with ourselves, we're dehypnotizing with everything that we learn. We're deprogramming with everything that we learn. So we have all been born into a state of mass psychosis. It is complete madness. If you were to come here from a orderly place, a place that is in order and harmony, where life is in harmony with itself, could be any other place, and you looked at this place, you would just go, what in the world are these beings doing? It makes no sense whatsoever. None of their behaviors are in any way, shape, or form rational, harmonious, or make any sense. That's on a collective level. If we look at this construct as the place that we reside in, which it is, we live in this place until we leave here. And even though it is a artificial construct, it's not a construct for our benefit, but we live in this place for now. If you look at how we operate collectively, we destroy a lot to build something that doesn't give life, doesn't sustain life. We create entire cement cities, asphalt, we create all this artificial, these structures that don't serve us at all, that create all kinds of problems that we can't solve, that hurt us, hurt life, hurt everything. We are under a mass psychosis, all of humanity. So this is an opportunity. I think I thank uh very thankful for those last years, even though it is, an evil, an unbelievable evil that has been unleashed upon the human family, and everybody's still suffering from it. Many people have lost their lives, and many are sick, and so there is a lot of evil. But never before have we had an opportunity to study ourselves, our behaviors, the systems, the evil within it, the nature of our reality in a better way than now. Like these past 4 or 5 years have given us an incredible opportunity to do that. And so for me, the idea is that we need to understand ourselves much better and get to know ourselves much better. And we cannot comprehend the true nature of this reality and who we really are until we work through the sickness, the mind virus. And this is why, my friends, those who criticize me so much, um, you know, it's your prerogative. You can do that. That's why we continually go deeper and deeper into these subjects and explore, because only when the penny drops can real changes happen. Only if we realize that COVID was that this period was one mass formation psychosis within a much larger mass psychosis that we were born into. And how you really see that is by some children uh, remain sort of intact and quite pure through their early childhood years. And they are often very vocal about the nonsensical stuff that we do. They ask questions that most adults can't even comprehend, where they go, why are we doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. They look at, just the structure of a daily life where people get up very early and they stress about everything, and they quickly jug down some coffee, and they run around and they're hectic, and then they put the kids in the car, and then they jump in the car, and then they race to kindergarten or school and drop the kids off, and then they race to work, and then they work all day, and the kids are separated from their parents, and they earn a living, right? And then eventually, when it's dark outside, the kids finally get out of school, have no more time to play, and there's a precious little, maybe a few hours of the day that the children get to spend with their families and with their friends, and interact, and children often ask, why do we do that? Why can't we just be and chill out, be at home, and go into the woods and play, and be with the animals and whatever? Children often are so clear on that. And then what we do is, because we need to prepare them for the real world, which is not the real world, which is the epitome of the fake world. So in our intention, we think it's a good intention, we need to prepare them for the world. We sort of beat that out of them. I'm not just talking physically. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's beating stuff out of their children, but we we make them see life in different ways, and we insist that they start seeing it our way. We insist that they start believing in artificial structures. We insist that they start adjusting to that and seeing that this is how reality works. And I still see it all around me. You know, you got to grow up. That's life. That's reality. That's how it works. And once again, I'll point to the COVID years, which showed us showed us that the immovable is movable, that the impossible is possible. What I mean by that is, I always joke, there's this saying, every country has a version of it. You know, two things are certain in life: death and taxes, right? And so, in the entire history of the United States, to my knowledge, for example, since the income tax and the establishment of the IRS, the tax deadline has not been moved. April 15th, every single year. In 2020, the tax deadline was moved. And listen, two things are certain: tax and death. The tax deadline was moved. So for me, I said, this is historic. We need to really pay attention to this. What they have been showing us, that none of this is real. They've given the people an opportunity to realize it's all just a thought construct. It's all just, it was invented in some evil entity's mind, the slave system, and they put it to a halt. They brought it to a halt. They brought it to a halt and said, hey, you free range slaves, we're going to put you in home prison for a while. But nonetheless, they brought it to a halt and they showed everybody it's not real. It's a figment of someone's or some entity's imagination, and we can stop it, we can change it, we can reverse it. You saw some wonderful things happen during 2-3 weeks, right? We saw the images from Venice and from other highly polluted places in the world that within a quick period of time, really fast, sort of started readjusting and cleansing, and animals returning very quickly. And so we had a glimpse into what would be possible, what could be possible. So, like I say, if we focus on fixing the world, which is unfixable, the world, this construct, was born to do and created exactly what it is, then we will chase after this all our lives and never get there. But if we can figure out ourselves really and our mind virus and heal from that, we're no longer participants, because nobody in their right mind would believe in a dead system and in a dead structure and in an enslavement system once they can see it. But you cannot see it until you start healing. That's just the crux of the story. You know, that's sort of the catch-22 here, is that unless you start healing, you don't realize what you've been exposed to and what you have believed in, what you have allowed to run your life. So this is the significance, and what makes it challenging for people that have families and spouses and are in a structure is that usually the larger part of the family wants to stick with the program. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to see it. They are in the mass psychosis and they are happy. They're not happy, but they're happy with it. And most people will take the, even though the situation might be bad, but what they know over what they don't know. And so when you start to really shift, what happens is you are awakening. First, you're awakening from a psychosis. You're literally awakening from a sickness, from a mind virus. You're starting to see it and observe it in you before even you start the healing process. You're starting to see it and say, why am I doing this? Why have I been exposing my children to this? Why did I ever believe that this was real? Now, granted, it's not like you can just get up and let it all go and just there is a process, a structure, and to a certain degree, you know, you still might have to do some sort of work in this world and still make money, because in this artificial construct, money represents freedom. So if you really want to step outside of it more, there's still a transitioning period, and that's not something to be guilted for or shamed for. That's just a reality. But then you're starting to see those things here. Most people think that the artificial world is the only way to live, not realizing they're imprisoned in a construct far removed from their true potential. That's what you start to see. They believe money is the key to freedom. And in the artificial world, money represents freedom. It's true. But in truth, it binds them to endless labor and debt, distracting them from creating their true space of love, for example. And a space of love can be called a space of truth in you first, who you are. And then, of course, you do that around you too. Now, once again, I'm the first one to tell you that the greatest suffering will be unleashed upon you if you just say, from one moment to the next, fuck money. I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's not going to work out well. I haven't seen it unless you want to be a sannyasin and go and meditate in a cave somewhere and never leave again. But we can start restructuring. We can start rethinking. We can start expanding our mind on those subjects. Another mass psychosis is blind trust in experts, scientists, and leaders that replaces trust in their own intuition and direct connection to the divine, right? This is also something that we saw so strongly during COVID, that even though you could explain through rational thought and logical thinking that what the official narrative is cannot be true, they would say, but you're not a doctor. Do you think all these doctors and all these scientists and all these government leaders would just lie to us, like all of them? Like they really know what they're talking about, bro. Like they're scientists. They're like they have degrees. You just go, it is, but there's an underlying um psychotic behavior that people oftentimes in life threatening situations where their intuition tells them clearly what they need to do, but someone in a white coat tells them the exact opposite, and they trust that white coat over their own intuition. They literally consent to death even because they don't trust themselves anymore. That's how programmed most people are. Separation from the creator, source, or true God, if you will. If you want to name it, if you need to name it, many are taught to see God as distant or external rather than understanding God's presence within themselves and every living thing. Right? This is such a big one. And it's the biggest trigger in the more religious oriented or scripture oriented. Although I believe, if I, for example, read most of the New Testament, for example, to me, it always points to exactly that. But nonetheless, there's this idea of separation as part of mass psychosis, that we are separate from creation or the creator or source energy, that we need to plead and to beg and ask and all of those, ask for mercy and all of those things. And what is interesting is that when people discover that they are a part of creation, not apart from it, but a part of it, that they have it within them, that miracles begin to happen in your lives, which are not miracles. It's just you've now all of a sudden opened the floodgates, and your divinity, your own true divinity, begins to flood through you and just flow freely. That's all. It's not blasphemy. Nobody's walking around saying, I'm God. Oh my God. I'm no, that's not what anybody's saying. It's more, I'm part of this eternal consciousness. I'm part of this eternal source energy. And I am learning and beginning to co-create with it on a much larger level. Life begins to change drastically. Happiness lies outside. That's one of the biggest ones. They chase happiness through consumption, entertainment, and societal approval, ignoring the boundless joy that arises from being in harmony with their true nature and love. So these are sort of these are the big picture things. And I've had this observation all my life. And I had to learn how to put words to it, how to construct thought patterns that could be presented to others. Because what happened so often to me, and you might have experienced that too growing up, maybe you were 15, 16, 17 years old, and you were just a little different than the rest. And the stuff you talked about was a little different. And so you were passionate and you could feel it inside of you. Like you could know exactly what you wanted to convey but it just never came out right. And whenever you said something, everybody just thought you're completely crazy, right? Like you're nuts. So most of my life was aimed at learning and expanding on my ability to transport these concepts and expand on that more and more and more, which I think others before us have done so beautifully in their own way and have allowed us and all of us to expand and learn. So, once again, this is something that you can sort of understand on a mental level, but it's things that we need to walk with. And what I would encourage you to do, and this is something that we've done for many years, and now I never step out of that perspective anymore. But if you have intense fluctuations in emotions throughout your days, right, where you're very excited, and then you get something sucks you out of that excitement, and you're down again, you're depressed again, you're hopeless, whatever, you're up and down, left and right. When that happens to you a lot, then the first thing I would encourage you to do is to learn to become an observer of yourself. And how do you do that? Usually you would just go about your day. You would do what you do in the morning when you get up. You don't think about it much. You do things in an automated way. As a matter of fact, most people run 95% of their lives from the subconscious through automated ways. So whatever you do first, whether you grab your phone or you get up or you feed the dogs or you brush your teeth, get a cup of coffee, whatever, set the intention to observe yourself every step of the day for a while, weeks, where you go, and always remind yourself, don't feel guilty when you forget after, like it's noon and it's the first time you think about it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. You'll get the hang of it. What you start to do is when you open your eyes and before the body moves out of bed and does things, you just observe and you go, okay, whatever I wanted to do, why did I want to do it? Why is this going to be my first thing that I do today? What is it? Is it because of a in the moment, in the now impulse? Is it because I'm feeling this right now? Or is it because that's what I'm doing every day at this time? That is a program that's running you then, if you realize that. If you do things over and over again, always at the same time, it's a program. Okay. So now you have to ask yourself, does this program benefit me? Or is it in the way of who and what I want to be? Okay. Is it in sync with truth or not so much? These are questions only you can answer for yourself. But once you start observing every step of your day, and I'm not saying change anything right now, like, just because you're realizing that going to that particular workplace really isn't what is your greatest fulfillment, don't go and quit right away. Just start to observe yourself, get to know yourself better, get to know your why, get to know your how, get to know you like you would want to get to know another person. We're so curious about other people and why they do things and what they really believe and how they grew up and what their families and religions and what are. Let's become more curious about why we do things the way we do them and what drives us, what our true belief systems are. I'm telling you, you might be 20 or you might be 80. It's quite refreshing how much we can learn about ourselves once we want to get to know ourselves. And so this observation behavior, I would encourage you to do that for quite some time, weeks, and write things down. Observe yourself, write it down. Don't judge, just observe. After a while, you will begin to have greater clarity about which parts you want to keep, which parts you want to let go of, and so on and so forth. What you will also learn is in which parts of your life you're still programmed by the system. Again, no judgment. Don't judge yourself. I won't judge you. I don't judge myself. But I'm saying, okay, do I still want that? Do I still want to be part of the mass psychosis here or not? So When you do this for weeks or even months, I've been doing it for years. It is incredible how much you start moving back into balance. You move back to clarity. Your thoughts start to harmonize. Your actions start to harmonize. You experience coherence more because you have clarity. And only when we have crystal clear clarity can we move and start changing our patterns, our thoughts, our intentions, and hence changing the reality as we experience it. And this is what this is all about. So, once again, whether you're hearing this for the first time today or for the 15th time, today could be the start for you. Today, you could start doing what I just suggested and continually doing it until you find out new things about yourself. You'll be amazed. The last thing I'm going to say about this is, and before we close the show, is that what a program does, and some programs are good, right? I mean, like I always say, I'm glad I know how to, tie my shoes, tie my laces without consciously thinking about that. If I jump in a stick shift car, I know exactly how to drive. I don't need to think about it. If I had to think about every little step, it would be quite tiresome. But here's what a program does. Generally speaking, if unimpaired, your consciousness would be open, like just non-restricted. A program focuses a part of your consciousness and your awareness in a more narrow way, which allows you to fulfill a task, right? It allows you to consciously fulfill a task, but it also usually prevents you from seeing anything outside of that program. And so the trick is to learn how to keep the good parts of the program, how to tie the shoelaces, but stay open to the possibility of all other knots there's many other knots that you could use. There's not just the one that you use to tie your shoes. So this is just a simple example, is when we recognize, when we are aware, become aware of our programs, it is so freeing and liberating to know why you do something and how it functions. And you also learn that you are not that program. You're not even the person who's tying the shoelaces. You're actually this observer point. And once that begins to really kick in and click, the penny drops, the light bulb goes off, and you start to see things you could never see before, and realize things you could never realize before. And most importantly, you are unleashing a dormant potential. I'm not talking just bodily potential. You're unleashing a dormant potential of consciousness. And my goodness, that's when people go, I've lived a certain way till I was 75. And then I've had these experiences. I've done those things. I've really examined myself. I've got to know myself. I changed a few things around. And my goodness, life is completely different now. It's like I can't even believe that I'm the same person. Those things thankfully now happen every day. They happen to people all over the place. And we are incredibly grateful that they happen so often within our community and we get to hear about it. So, my friends, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being the awesome, wonderful beings that you are. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon. Right now, you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.